Hello, welcome to my channel, Wing Spiritual Clarity. My name's Wendy Wing. I'm doing a psychic tarot reading for you, tuning in to the day's energies, seeing what divine messages of guidance come through. This is a general reading, so take what resonates and leave the rest. Hope this reading finds you happy and healthy and enjoying your journey to becoming more and more yourself. All right, the overall energy of today's reading is the Nine of Swords in reverse. This is definitely the way I prefer seeing this card, in reverse. Nine of Swords upright is being stuck in fears, being stuck in a comfort zone, analysis paralysis. When I've been in Nine of Swords energy, I was stuck in analysis paralysis, thought loops, stuck in the past, what had happened, going over and over, and just living in these thought loops, these stories that during my day, I would just go off into these thought loops and trying to find resolution, retell the story to myself. I lived in these past thought loops. It was hard to connect with me because I wasn't in present time. I couldn't have a conversation because my conversation would be telling a whole story, and hated being interrupted. I felt like I needed to complete. I was trying to find the end of the story, trying to resolve something that was an equation that's unsolvable in those thought loops. And so Nine of Swords in reverse is when it got painful enough that I was willing to face my fears and get out of that stuck position. When I was really stuck in those thought loops and stuck in the past, stuck in past wounds and past stories, everything ground down to a stop, a halt. I wasn't taking action. I was living kind of in those thought loops. The best way that I got out of that was taking action. Stopped living in my thoughts. Stopped living in those stories and started living in the present time by taking action. All right, let's see. Why is the Nine of Swords in reverse? The overall energy. What does the viewer, whoever's here, need to know about Nine of Swords in reverse? 10 of Pentacles reverse, 9 of Pentacles, Knight of Wands. Yeah, action, world building. That's how I got out of that stuck energy. Stopped trying to ground those thought loops into the present time. They were in the past. It feels like with 10 of Pentacles in reverse, why you might be stuck is that an environment that you spend a lot of time growing, spend a lot of your energy in cultivating, creating something you thought would last forever, you're happily ever after. It feels like it disintegrated, didn't last, something ended. 10 of Pentacles in reverse, an environment that you would spend a lot of time investing in. Feels like you might be, the part of that analysis paralysis is trying to keep from allowing something to fall apart, not understanding why it is. It looks like with the Nine of Pentacles, 2 nines right away. It feels like you can take action, not think your way out of this. Like literally, there's a need to world build. Knight of Wands is world building energy. Take action. Feels like you might be building a new world for yourself. Nine of Pentacles, independent wealth, abundance. If you don't have it, it feels like when you leave that environment, take action, getting out of a comfort zone, something very painful, where you might have been just stuck in thoughts, hurt, inaction, and it feels like you're willing to do something about it. And by training your focus on what you want, getting out of those thought loops, nothing you want is in those stories. Nothing that you want is in living in a past memory. I kept living in those past memories, trying to, where I was living at that time, I felt like I was being erased. Who I was, my perspective, my emotions didn't matter, and in the 3D, and so I kept my memory of who I was alive in those thought loops, reminding myself of the real story, that I don't agree with the story of the environment I'm in, and I felt like I was being erased, and I was keeping myself alive, I thought, in those thought loops, in the memories, to validate the truth of my experience, of the pain that I had gone through, the confusion, being denied my perspective, my reality. To protect myself, I went off into those thought loops. However, at some point, I had to stop living in those thought loops and start living in the 3D. And the best way to do that was taking action, focusing on what I want, because that keeps me in present time, not in thought loops, not in theory, not how things should have been, not the past, which nothing can be done about that. And so being present, taking each day one day at a time, and taking action in the 3D is what got me back into present time. All right. Hidden blessings, we have the Three of Wands in reverse. A lack of action. Magician. Ooh, the Knight of Pentacles in reverse was hiding behind the Magician reversed. Lack of action. Lack of cultivating an environment. Magician reverse. This could be a combination. This is either you not understanding how to consciously create what you prefer, or someone consciously trying to manifest against you, trying to manifest with your energy. This is hidden blessings. So why is the Three of Wands reversed, Knight of Pentacles reversed, Magician reversed? How's this a hidden blessing? Oh, Nine of Swords, Page of Swords reversed. So the Nine of Swords again coming out. It's about these thought loops, being stuck. Page of Swords reverse is not learning, no new information coming in, no new, but it's a real stuck energy. That Nine of Swords, it might be called a comfort zone, but it's very painful. It's incredibly painful, stuck in thoughts, fears, past wounds, hurts. it's all looks like past energy, how things should have been, how people harmed you, all those stories. It feels like they never really got healed and resolved and integrated into who you are. It feels like a lot of unresolved trauma. And a desire to not allow others to erase your perspective, your harm, the harm that was caused, the hurt. And so it feels like, as a strategy to not be erased, you live in your thoughts, remind yourself who you are, remind yourself of who other people really are. Doesn't feel like this is a safe environment. But it also, at the point that I'm looking at, it feels like your defensive strategies, your desire to not be erased and living in these thought loops are working against you, making it impossible to take action, making it impossible to be present and create something new. It feels like you can't create, if you live in the past and you are constantly living in your thoughts and in your memories and trying to keep yourself alive, everything grinds down. This time-space reality is built on action. Karma even means action. So being stuck and just living in the past, you're not taking any action. Not helping yourself. By not being present, you don't even know what it is that you want going forward. And to manifest consciously what you want, you've got to be in the vibration. You've got to be the vibration of what you want before you see it, before you receive it. You got to match the energy of what you want. And so if you're living in the past, one, you're not present. You're living in the woundedness. And so you're creating more woundedness, more confusion, more people around you who are going to victimize. So again, how is this a blessing? It feels like recognizing that this aspect, recognizing that it's a way to prevent self-erasure, to not forget the harm that was caused to you. So there's a defensive mechanism to this as well. Anything else? It feels like recognizing this and recognizing, well, first I got to solve this. First I've got to, it's an unsolvable equation. And I think the blessing is recognizing to stop living in those thoughts and start taking action. Start living. All right. What you're leaving behind is the Seven of Wands in reverse. Enmeshment. No boundaries. No healthy boundaries. So, feels like I'm talking to someone who grew up in a family of origin, in a society where you're not allowed to have your own opinion, your own boundaries. It feels very enmeshed, like you're part of a group. And so there's a lot of upset, disappointment. It looks like you in relationships, it feels like you pour into other people and they expect you to continue to pour into them without reciprocity. Repeat. So, looks like you've attracted a lot of immature emotionally immature people. There's a new pathway opening up for you. An exit, an entrance to a different way of living, a new opportunity. It's a seed of potential, but it feels like with the Eight of Wands coming out that very quickly, if you take this exit, this new opportunity, this pathway, that it's not about thoughts, it's about action. Tangible in the 3D action to get yourself out of here if you're living in those thought loops. My two raven friends just flew over. That was really cool. All right. How to get the most of this energy is the Ten of Swords in reverse. Fortune after difficulty. When I was in that Nine of Swords energy for years, really stuck, living in thought loops, it was really hard to connect with me in present time because I lived in the stories. I've got stories, I've got hurts, I've got unresolved pain, and I had always been the one meeting everybody else's needs, helping them, and no one helping me. So I needed to help myself, learn how to put myself first. And I didn't get myself out of Nine of Swords. I had to have a Ten of Swords experience, a painful ending to get me unstuck. To get me out of that inaction, out of my living in limerence, living in fantasy, and living in those thought loops. King of Cups in reverse. It feels like there's someone that you've been connected with, very emotionally immature, allergic to emotions, judges emotions. This feels like someone who's kind of cut off their own emotional centers. So that tells me that this person doesn't mature, because if you don't feel your emotions without the story, without being in a thought loop, without being in a story, just feeling the discomfort and feeling the fear, feeling whatever's coming up, it helps you process emotions and heal. And on the other side of healing from emotions, you get the wisdom from that experience. What I didn't realize is by living in those thought loops, I was keeping my wounds open and attracting more wounds. I'm laughing because I didn't know what I didn't know, right? So I've got a great deal of compassion for that version of myself who was very confused. And it stunted my emotional growth by living in the pain and living in the past and living in fantasy. I wasn't in present time. By not processing your emotions and processing the wounds, not the story. I don't know how to say that. Not the story. The story is not going to get you to your healing. The story, let's just let that go and feel the upset. Feel it in your body. Let it process through. Let it move through you without bracing, without catastrophizing, without going into the story, but just feel it. And if you externalize and blame someone for how you're feeling, then you're not going to heal, because you are attributing that energy to someone else. It's your emotions for you to feel. They're yours to feel. Once you feel and process your emotions and are willing to, on the other side is wisdom, learned experience, things you can't get from a book. And once I was willing to finally take action, stop living in stories, be present, then I was able to mature emotionally. Not heal from my woundedness, not walk around like a giant wound, collecting more wounds, more hurts. Kind of like a snowball rolling downhill, it just attracts more and more of the same. And so, how to get the most of this energy is let it end. Let those thought loops end. Stop living in fantasy and live in reality, in the present time. Little bits at a time. I didn't go full present time. I just wedged in a few minutes at a time and get used to, because it felt very uncomfortable to be in present time. I hadn't lived in present time for a long time because I was always going off and disassociating into a story. Didn't like where I was, but where I am, present time, that's where all your power is. All right, what's supporting you is the Four of Swords in reverse. This is my card for cutting contact. Not as punishment at all, but for yourself, for self-healing. Cutting contact, no longer connecting with, communicating with, definitely those thought loops. Nothing you want. It's a habit. It's where I used to live. But nothing is there. It's nothing you want. It's an unsolvable equation, and you just go into those thought loops and you're trying to resolve these wounds with upper chakra energies, and they need to be resolved in your lower chakras, felt somatically, emotions, feeling. All right, anything else about cutting contact? Seven of Swords in reverse. This is another communication card. There's a need to be tactical. Say less. Can you be tactical? Can you help yourself by saying five swords less? This person it's a type of warfare. It's not overt, explicit combat. This person is going into enemy encampments under the cover of night, darkness, and stealing 5 of their 7 swords. Swords I'm seeing as communication, perspective, upper chakras. And so it feels like there's a need for you to be tactical. Say less. Part of it is that you might, when you communicate, just go right into those thought loops and just be trying to tell your story. There's something here about just keeping things to yourself for a while, to be tactical, mindful. Anything else? Knight of Cups in reverse. Ooh, 2 of Cups reversed, 6 of Swords reversed, Knight of Cups reversed. There's some type of fantasy Okay. Uh, this is more of, feels like there's those thought loops that are probably more about past wounds, trying to remember who you are, your truth, your reality. And then there's fantasy, limerence, how things should have been. And it feels like you might get caught up instead of reality, what's real, and just what's real I can work with, instead of it should have been that feels like thought loop. If you're living in fantasy, disassociating, kind of just escaping to a fantasy place, what might be helpful, what helped me get out of thought loops, definitely taking action. But when I learned, and I'm not saying you have to learn psychic development at all, but when I started attuning my energy this way, vertically grounding into earth, grounding into the center of earth, and connecting with my higher self, running my energy more vertically instead of trying to get alignment with everyone in my environment, I just became aligned myself. For some of you, it feels like this might be the end of a relationship, a comfort zone relationship. And there's a need to be tactical and cut communication with this person. Doesn't feel like right now is the time, especially if you perceive that you are vulnerable. There's a need to be tactical and recognize I'm not on the upper ground. I'm on the lower. Sun Tzu, Art of War. Tactical. There's a time and a place to tell your story, and this is not the time and place, is what I'm getting. There's a need to keep things to yourself. Focus on what it is that you prefer going forward. Not how things should have been. No. It feels like that's not helpful. Tell me about the Six of Swords. Yeah, I feel like you're vulnerable. Seven of Wands reversed twice. You're not protected, or you're vulnerable, and so now is not the time to share your story. There's a need to alchemize, find balance first. Also, it feels like your nervous system might be wrecked from constant fawn or freeze. Your nervous system might be so wrecked it just feels normal, though, to just be in a hypervigilant mode. And so the message I'm perceiving is take care of yourself first, and then the story. And then there's something about letting go of and helping yourself, cutting communication with those who have shown you that they don't care. Say less. Just the facts, just the little not the full detail. All right. What to be mindful of is the Eight of Cups in reverse. This is emotional attachments, unable to walk away, unable to put something down. And that feels like those thought loops, or how things should have been. It feels like you might have a lot of thoughts and beliefs and stories and living out here, which isn't really grounded into reality. You might be more attached to the thought loops and the wounds than being present and healing and what's next. What would help for someone who this reading is resonating? What would help? Thank you. Page of Wands, Judgment. Follow your highest excitement. Action. Not thinking about, not living, oh, that would be fun, and then going off into your imagination and kind of playing it out and living. This is action in the 3D. Not, that's a great idea, I'm going to go fantasize and live it in that experience. Follow your highest excitement, even if it doesn't lead to anything, for the fun of it. By following your highest excitement without any attachment to outcome, to just do it for the fun of it, then you have to be present. You're in present time. I'm doing it for fun. Fun is not in those thought loops. Fun is not here in your fantasy. Fun is in the 3D. If you can't find fun, if you can't find excitement, then curiosity. When I was in Nine of Swords for a long time, my vibration couldn't reach joy, happiness, excitement. Are you kidding? So I picked curiosity. What am I curious about? What am I interested in? What do I want to learn? And I thought, I'm going to go take a psychic class. I'm not saying that's for you. I'm saying for me, when I was really stuck, I was like, I'm curious about, and what have I got to lose? It sounds interesting. And I didn't do it to lead me here. I did it because it's the highest excitement, and I just kept following my excitement. And I'm still doing that with this, with other things. Following your highest excitement with no need for an outcome, no attachment to an outcome, just doing it for the fun of it is amazing. You also meet up with other people who are interested in having fun in that moment, that can meet you, synchronicities, timing. Wonderful people I've met out shopping, on the trail, mostly on the trail. Just perfect timing. Little impromptu connections with wonderful people, dogs, animals. All right, and then Judgment coming out as a challenge to that as well is expansive energy. Some of you might have a calling. If you're trying to prove a calling and I got this hit, and then I heard this on the radio, and then I saw 1111 everywhere, and then I saw 333 every. Those are intuitive hits for you to say, yes, let's go this way, let's go that way, and not, those messages aren't for you to prove to others that you're not insane for going after what you want to go after. Just go after what you want to go after. Stop trying to convince anyone else, because that calling stuff is just for you. And it sounds like you're trying to convince and prove that you're on the right track. Instead, just know that for yourself. You don't need the yahoos around you to understand why you're making the moves you're making. With a calling also, follow your highest excitement without any need for outcome. And once that excitement extinguishes, then go after whatever else makes you excited, and just keep following your highest excitement. It feels like it's leading you to a very expansive state, a version of yourself that's very different, where you could really be yourself and understand more clearly what you've gone through. But it requires action. Boy, 8 of Cups. Clarifying 8 of Cups in reverse. So this, even though it's difficult, even though there's emotional attachments, they can walk away. So it feels like you are shifting your energy so you're not so attached and can make moves. Chariot, move on, move away from a very hopeless situation where you're being breadcrumbed, where you're not being invested in properly. All right, I'm going to do an extended reading. If this has been resonating for you, you can follow me on Patreon. There's a link in the description box below. It says extended reading here. You click on that link. It takes you right to Patreon and part 2 of this reading, where I will be looking at health, relationships, creativity, new career. Oh, that's interesting. New opportunities and career and finance. So I'll see you over there. If not, have an amazing rest of your day. Take care.